What's up, everybody? This is the do-over. You guys, if you saw the last couple of videos, you saw the colors on it, and I just didn't love it. And this guitar has a lot of sentimental value to the owner, and I just didn't want to give it back without me loving the guitar. Right? I kind of felt like yeah, it's good. It, it's okay. I mean, that's what they asked for. They wanted blue, they wanted orange, and this is blue and orange, and here you go. I mean, it looked clean and tight, professional. I just didn't love it. This one, I love. I'll show it to you. I'll just pick it up. You guys can see what I'm working on. That is so sexy. Look at that stock. God, that is just gorgeous. I I've already got the customers some initialing up here, and I've got in the 12th fret. I've got the epoxy with the same. Well, I'll just show you. Now it's not polished yet. Can I get better lighting on it? There you go, that's a little better. So it's got the same orange that I used for the binding, and then the initials, and then the clear epoxy on top of it. And that clear epoxy, I think, is 1,000 up to like 1,000. Get some light on it. So it's definitely not as crystal clear as it will be when I'm done. But you can see where we're at. We're at the blue fretboard stage. I just love how this just looks gorgeous to me. I laid the hardware on top of it. I really just love it. The customer is going to go just crazy about it, I'm sure. Especially if that person checks out the video of what I didn't want to give back to them. They're gonna look at that and say, yeah, that looks totally tight and professional and clean. But this, it's just it's a world away from what it was. It took me a while to get there because I don't want to do paint on top of paint on top of paint on top of paint. So I didn't just reshoot the guitar. I stripped it all the way back down to mostly wood. There was a lot of primer around the edges that I tried not to cut through because that's where all the repairs were. The horn, I modified the horn. I pulled the horn back and reshaped it, rounded it. And that just, it didn't look exactly perfect to me with the other colors on it. So I just cleaned it up a little bit, just by hand. I didn't put it on the spindle sander or anything, but I kind of think that my horn had like kind of a low spot over here. It was nothing. Like nobody would have ever noticed it except me, but I fixed that. But I mean, look at that. Like, have you ever seen? No, especially with that binding. That is just sexy. Okay, so now here's where we're at. So this has not been sanded or polished, and it's got the finish coat of lacquer on it. Now, when I put the finish coat of lacquer on it, usually I'll sand to 1,000 grit, and then I'll put another 2 light coats of lacquer on top of that. And the reason for that is because if there's any highs or lows in the lacquer, they're going to be super, super tiny by the time you sand and then spray it again. So I wanted it to be like a perfectly even shine. If you don't get an even shine, you get like waves in the shine. You certainly don't want that. I always test. Okay, so on this part of the guitar, it's a lot of, I call this the field, right? This is like the outfield. So it's all nice and flat. It's not like a flat body guitar, but there's not a lot of waves and curves in this part of the guitar, which is the opposite of this part of the guitar. Like you have the arch top guitar that comes to a point right here. So you got a lot going on right here on the horn. So this part is kind of like right in between this part and this part. So it's got some curve to it and a little bit of flat to it. So what I do is I always use that as my test spot for my finish coat. So I sprayed it with the last coat, and then I let it cure, and then I sand it with like 1,000 or sometimes even like 1,500 grit paper, just to make sure that I got the finish as flat as I can get it. So just with some real quick, I didn't work on it and work on it. I just took some 1,000 and did it over real quick. And what I'm looking for is shiny spots. And I can see I got a little bit in here. And of course, like this corner right here is always hard to make it look perfect. And of course, that it's right there, right? So you really want to make sure that you got that line where the neck goes into the body. You want to make sure you got that absolutely perfect. I've seen them where it looks like they just ran like a bead of glue down that, and then just like with their finger, like it was like they're caulking a bathtub or something, and that looks bad. You want nice, hard, crisp 90-degree lines in there, which we've got that to this point. Yeah, the charcoal with the blue. Oh yeah, that's cool. So I got the initials up here with like the blue metallic outline around the letters, which are the same charcoal as the guitar, and it's like a frost. It's super cool. It's like a frost metallic blue. It looks really good. When I polish that up, man, it's gonna be like, very personalized, which I wanted it to be that way. In order to do the work to the fretboard, I had to modify the fretboard. The old fretboard on this guitar had so many problems that it just, I wanted to save it for sentimental reasons. It was part of the original guitar, but it would not have made for a good guitar, right? So I made the decision to replace the fretboard. The new one that I put on is a little bit lighter in color than the old one, but it was flat. I mean, it was clean on the back. Uh, if you remember, we had to move the truss rod channel in this, and when we pulled the old fretboard off, you could see how many problems there were with the old fretboard. So we got rid of it. We replaced it, and then we modified it, which means I had to take a finished fretboard and pull the frets out of it. Which, not something that you want to do, but in order for me to put the initials in there, I had to pull those two frets out. And just a lot of reasons that I really wanted to. I wanted to re-radius the fretboard because it was a 12 and I wanted a 16 on it. So I know 16 is a little flatter than what some people like, but for a Les Paul type guitar, you're going to be doing a lot of bending. Hopefully, if you're doing a lot of bending, to me, a, 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 a shallower radius is better. When you bend a note across a steeper radius, the note is more likely to fret out it's just the physics of how the string moving diagonally across a curved surface. Look it up, you'll see what I mean. But this is where I'm at. I thought I'd give you guys an update. Some of the tools that I use, let me get this out of my face. Some of the tools that I use, I had to use the file after I pressed the frets in. I pressed the frets in. I try never to hammer on a neck of a guitar if I can avoid it. Sometimes you got one and it doesn't want to press in, and the best thing to do in that case is to take that fret out, throw it away, and go in there, go into that fret slot with a blade. I kind of use the back edge of the blade. I go in and I dig. I go in and I dig. I go in and I dig until I get all the way to the binding. And 9 out of 10 times, the problem is your binding glue seeped in, or in this case, epoxy, seeped in to the fret slot and is preventing that fret from seating. Now, there's a couple of cheats that people will use. I got some frets here. Let me pop one out and I'll show you what I'm talking about. If you guys have ever done any fret work, if you buy your frets pre-cut, this can be a problem for you. Oh man, oh here they are. Okay, these frets, I bought them pre-cut. And I always I'll buy 24 frets for a 22 fret guitar, and I'll take the second fret and move it down to the first fret position. And that is because, let me get my pointer here. Okay, see that cut? See that cut right there? So what some people will do is they'll just take and they'll just file that back further because they're hitting something in that fret slot. But if you do that, then you've got the actual crowned part of the fret that runs out too long. It just cantilevers out without having the tang under it. So that's it's like a T-shaped structure there. Oh, look, I got it on camera. All right, so if you take this part away and you just have the fret wire part of it cantilevering out over the binding, and then you take that even further back because there's something in the way, then that part of the fret becomes flimsy. It can bend, it can lift, it can move around. If you're stringing the guitar and your E string is getting under there, like, it can move the fret. So instead of doing that, it's way better to clean that fret slot out so that you have a minimal amount of fret hanging out past the tang, right? You just want the bare minimum. You want that tang to go from binding to binding. People are going to say, oh, but you got to allow for expansion and contraction. And no, you don't. You make it right. This is already dry. It's not going to expand and contract enough that is going to poke through the binding. It's not going to poke through the binding. It's not going to lift the binding. I've never had that happen. I have seen binding lift where the tang is too far. When you wind up taking the binding off, you can see the binding was sticking out the whole time, and there was just glue filling in the void between the inside of the binding and the edge of the fretboard. But anyway, I digress. Just make sure that you don't have too much of a cantilever out there. It should only be the binding. That's as much as it should go. Any further than that, and you risk that deforming, especially when you're pressing it in. If you're going to tap them in with a hammer, and I do mean tap. I've seen guys going at it like they're stick framing a house. Like, that's not what this is. If you got to hammer on it that hard, your fret slots are too narrow. Buy a fret slot cutting saw or jig, whatever you're going to use. I do them by hand. I score the fretboard while it's still square. I score it 90 degrees, and then I run a center line in and I cut both sides of the fretboard. I overcut, and then I plane down to that line, leaving the line on until I glue that fretboard in place, and then I sand that edge of that. In this case, it's binding because if it's just wood, you can just sand it wood to wood from the fingerboard to the neck. That's an easy one. But if it's binding, you got to be pretty precise with your cut before you put the binding on, because when your binding goes on, that's going to make it wider on one side, wider on the other side, and that width has to be exactly the width of the neck that you're putting it on, right? So a little more challenging that way, and the binding is so thin, like it's not like you can shave a lot off of this, because you'll see it on the binding edge. You'll see where the binding gets real thin and then thickens back up in other places, and you don't want that. You want that perfectly straight line. So spend the time making the fretboard the right shape. Just creep up to that line and try it. Creep up to the line and try it. Just keep creeping and creeping and creeping. And sometimes what I'll do, if I'm bigger, let's say I'm bigger on the top and I'm already good at the bottom, then I'll just put some blue tape, around the edge of the bottom of the fretboard, and I'll run it along a flat edge, like a something like that with the sandpaper here, and I'll just run it along that edge until I sand that tape off. Then I know I've sanded more wood at the thicker edge than I have down at the where it's already good, and I haven't sanded anything off of that. So I'm changing that angle from this to this, just the thickness of the tape, right? And just keep doing that until you got it perfect. And then because the neck has a curve to the back of it, sometimes your binding comes straight down and then your neck curves like this. So you have a little bit of sanding forgiveness at the bottom of the binding, just not on the fretboard, just not at the top of the fretboard. Okay, so I use this guy here. You can buy these. They got wooden ones. Don't buy the wooden ones. They suck. Buy yourself a nice aluminum one, and you can buy them as long as a fretboard. I don't like those. I have used them. In fact, I gave mine away because I didn't like it, because to me it always felt like I was taking more off of the upper frets and the lower frets than I was taking off of the middle frets, and I don't know why that was. No matter if you hold it in the center, if you hold it on the ends, it just didn't seem to matter. When you put your marker on your frets, every time I use that tool, I would make sure you're going to need one of these. This is a neck straightening tool, or neck check straightness tool. I don't know what it's called. Guitar neck straightness check tool. Look at that. Maybe they can come up with a snazzier name for it. But you got to use one of these, because you don't want to check to see if the frets are level, because they're not. They're brand new frets. They're not all going to be perfectly the same. They're not going to be perfectly level. If you do a really good job, they're going to be close. And in this case, they were really close. So it wasn't a lot of. I didn't even file. I just sanded. I'll show you that after. Get yourself one of these guys here. Make the neck perfectly straight, not the frets. Make the neck perfectly straight, and then you got to make sure you have support on the neck like I do right here. So I don't want my support all the way out at the edge, and I don't want my support too close to the body. I just want my, like I'm like 4 to 9, right? I don't care if it cantilevers out a little bit. If I feel like I'm moving the guitar, I'll slide this further out that way while I'm up here. And I kind of do it in like 4 stages. Three might seem more natural, but I do 4 because I don't want it in thirds. This third, this third, and this third. So I'll do it here, and then I'll do it kind of like here, and then in the middle, like thirds. But then when I finish, I do it in 4. I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's because I don't want the thirds being worked on as thirds. I want them to be one continuous neck. So I don't have this third, I did it and I brought it down. And then here it is again and I brought it down. And then the next third. So if you overlap them from like a third to a quarter, you don't get that. Right here is where I stopped. And then right here is where I stopped. So those are going to be lower than this group of frets and this group of frets. If you divide it up so that you're not only working on the same frets every time you work on it, which in this case there was none of that. But if there was, this is not the tool for frets. This is the tool for sanding the radius into the fingerboard. It's got a 12 and a 16. Don't use this to try to level your frets. This is not the right tool. You do not want to. This is wider than the neck, especially on the nut end of the guitar, right? So if you're not holding this perfectly centered on there and you're just a little off, you're going to mess these frets up so bad. Like, don't, this is for sanding a radius into the wood. Don't use this on your metal frets. These frets are stainless, so I'm really glad that they came out so level, because they're very difficult to level. They're level resistant. How's that? So the way that I get my frets level, make your neck perfectly straight. Get yourself a magic marker. You can use one of these. I got another, like the Magnum, floating around here somewhere. I don't know where it went. You know that big fat Sharpie, the one that's like, you can tag bridges with it. Don't use that. Get yourself one of these cheapies. Like, I think I swiped this from work by accident. Get yourself a cheapie. What I did when I was leveling these frets is I went right off the fret and drew a nice black line across the fingerboard. Man, you do that with a Sharpie, you may never get it out. You can get most of it out, and you kind of can't always see it, but sometimes it's just got like a little bit of purple in that one. Like, believe me, use the cheapy one because it comes right off. I use alcohol. I use this stuff to wipe it off. If you use an acetone and you get it on the lacquer, or if you use a lacquer thinner and you get it on the lacquer, it can be a problem for you. So I use this. If you get it on the lacquer, it will discolor the lacquer. If you get a drop on there, it's going to have like a white spot where the drop was. But if you were smart enough to not sand and polish the guitar before you did this, then when you run it over with some really fine grit wet paper, that white spot goes away, because it's only on the very, very surface of it. Whereas a thinner or an acetone will eat into that, and you may not be able to get it out without having to respray the guitar. Respraying means wait. Now you gotta wait until it hardens up again. Some people, they think, oh, I can touch it, so it's good, I can sand it. It's not good. It has to really harden. I can't express that strongly enough that you really have to let this age. It seems like it's perfectly dry, but here's an indicator. If you start sanding that lacquer and you can smell it, it is not ready for sanding because you're releasing the you know the thinner, the chemicals. You're releasing those chemicals out of the lacquer, which means that they didn't come out. So it means it's not cured. And when you sand it and you can't smell anything, it means that everything has evaporated out of it. You're only left with solids on the instrument instead of something that still has some liquids in it. You can't polish that. You'll just ruin it. So don't even try. So Sharpie, use the cheapy magic marker. I got some on there. I took the alcohol. It came right off. You can wind up with the the fret stripes on your arm. So people are like, did you get a new tattoo of a fretboard? Oh no, sorry. And this is my newer phone. So the colors on this phone are probably gonna be off. I hope you guys can see. I'm gonna have to watch my own video and see if it looks accurate. When I'm looking at it on the screen, it looks pretty accurate, but this shirt that I'm wearing is purple and yellow, so I'm not sure about the colors on the phone. But one of the other tools you're going to need, one of these guys here. I made this one, this was a cutting board, and I was like, I gotta be able to use that for something. It's like a real those furniture slides that are like Teflon. That's what this stuff is like. It's like super, super slick, but I made it so that sticks out probably further than it should. That sticks out like a good 3/8 of an inch, right? So the way that I use this tool, it should only stick out like probably, if I make a new one, I'm only going to make it stick out like maybe 3/16 of an inch. But this one, where's the other file? There's another file around here somewhere. You guys know what a file looks like. Here it is. Okay, look at your file. You guys see the lines in the file? Okay, so those lines are what cuts away the metal. You can see all the metal that's stuck in there. I got to go over it with a wire brush to get those out. But this file only cuts these frets in one direction. So if you're going back and forth, don't do that. Just use the file how it's made to be used to cut in one direction. One direction. This file, this is why I used this file. It has the crosshatch file on it. I don't know if you can see it, but it's got lines that go this way, and it's got lines that go that way. So this file cuts in both directions. I prefer that because I find that if you go in one direction with one of these files, then your frets are going to be perfectly smooth on the forward edge of the fret. If you're cutting this direction, it'll be smooth on this edge of it, but not so smooth on this edge of it. So I would wind up going this way and then flipping around and going back that way. So I'm not sure what that's about, but with this guy here, because it's a crosshatch, you can go backwards and forwards. The way that I do that is I have a special tool that I use. You want to put tape on the guitar here. If you're doing this side, of the fretboard, you want to put tape over here, and of course you want to protect the body, right? And because this sticks out so much, it will hit the body. So I have a special tool that I use when I'm coming across here. Here it is. And I just put my finger and I hold it like that, and when I come down, I stop because I'm hitting my finger. I'm just coming down, and I hit my finger, and then I go back. I come down, I hit my finger, and I go back. I do the same thing on the other side. I use, either use my thumb or use my finger, but there's a stop that will keep me from dragging this edge of the file across the face of the guitar. Even if there's tape on it, like this guy, this is old. I made this like I don't know, 15 years ago maybe, and it's still like sharp as a knife on the corners. So this would do some serious damage. So only use, I only use it where it's safe to use it, and then from there I switch over to something a little more safe. And I the way that I do it is I hold it in two places like this, and I'm supporting it. There's tape. I got my finger like that. So when I'm holding it, my finger is rubbing on the guitar, not the file. So it's like this kind of an action here. And I go straight up and down, and then I start to roll. Straight up and down, and I start to roll. Straight up and down until I am touching the binding. As soon as I start to get binding in here, and you can see that is binding. Starting, once I touch the binding, I'm like, I'm there. I'm all the way down. I've got those perfectly even with the binding. Then I start to roll it to like a 45 degree. Some people like to do a 60 degree. That's a lot. Some people like to do like a 30 degree. 30 degrees okay. It just doesn't, to me, it doesn't look as clean as a 45. I like the 45 better. If your strings are positioned on the neck properly, a 45 still gives you plenty of room down here on the first fret. That when you fret that note, you're going to be on the flat part of the fret, not on the 45. It's all about how you cut the neck, how you cut the nut, having the right spacing on the strings, and making sure make sure you got the 42 mil that minimum that you need. I usually shoot for like a 43 mil neck, and I always wind up with like 42 and a half. By the time I cut the nut, it's like 42 and a half mil. So just make sure bigger is always better because you can come down. And then of course, where I'm at right now is I am about to crown these leveled frets, and here's how I level it with a level. I got some spray glue. I use this stuff here. I cut my paper into strips. Make sure that your paper is flat. You definitely don't want your paper to be like this. You want your paper to be like this. Even a little space like that won't hurt anything. So either flush together or a little space between them, just not like that, because you're going to have a high spot in your paper that you don't want. And all I do is I spray glue the paper, then I cut into strips, I stick it on. Same thing, I clean that off with alcohol. They peel right off. So it holds on there really well. See that? So it doesn't hold on there so well that I'm going to be scraping. I don't want to be scraping on my level, but if you peel it off slow, you can see the gummy. See how it's gummy in there? Okay. So once I hit that with alcohol, that's going to come right off. But not something that's too weak, not a super light tack, because your paper can lift and it'll fold under, and then it's not that it'll damage the frets, but it could scar the fretboard. So use something that's a heavy enough tack that it'll hold the paper while you're using it, but not so heavy that it's going to destroy your tool when you're cleaning it up. Because you know, you're going to use that again and again and again and again, hopefully. You know, don't buy those plastic levels either. Buy either aluminum or steel. Don't use plastic. Don't use wood. Use the metal ones. The I-beam construction ones are the best ones because they stay super, 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 super straight. If you want to check it, lay it down on a table saw that has a ground top and put a flashlight behind it, and you'll see how perfectly ground that edge is. I've seen it where you can see the grind marks in them, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that aside from the glue getting gummed up in there or it holding dirt. I prefer one that has like this is like a kind of a dye that they put in the metal, so it's not paint, so it doesn't scratch off. Whatever it is, it's in the metal. So, and the alcohol won't hurt it at all. If you've got this kind of a level and you're through the dye where you can see it's silver, throw it away, because you can't use that level for this job anymore, because that means that you've got a low spot in that level. It's no good. So I like the dyed ones because I can always see if they're still perfect or if it's, you know, if it's time to get rid of it and get a new one. You know, if you're working and you set it aside and it falls over and you get a, you know, you get a chunk in the side of it, you got to file that out or sand it out and check it. You got to make sure you're perfect there. You know, a little bit of a file here, making a little bit of a low spot is not that big of a deal because the whole rest of the level is going to be right. But if you got a high spot in it, you can't work with that. It's going to be like dig, 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 dig right where that high spot is. That's not something you can work with. But that's how I get my frets all perfectly level with each other. Luckily, there was no filing for this one at all. I did a 400 grit, and then I think this was an 800. Oh no, this is still the 4. Yeah, this is still the 400. So I'll do an 800 on them. They're pretty nice. I might just go right straight to 1,000. I'll do like I think I'm going to do an 8, and then I will crown them with my crowning tool. I showed you guys that in the last video. This tool is super cool because it's got that run out on it right there. And that run out, if you're using that run out the way that this tool is meant to be used, you don't have to go back, and you don't have to go and round, you know, you don't have to round 4 corners of every fret, you know, where you do this and you roll and then you come across the other side and you roll. It works good. I mean, that feels really good. But, you know, I got to do that 4 times on every fret. With this tool, I don't have to do it at all. I'll show you. I'll find a sticky one. That's about the stickiest one right there. And these are stainless. And you can actually hear the difference when you're like, the stainless ones sound different than the softer ones. But come up and, you know, use your finger as a guide. Oops, let me get you on the camera there. So, see, it wasn't. No, I don't even know which one it was because they're because they just came out really good. None of them are really sticky outy. None of them are snaggy. This one's got a little bit of a snaggy right on the back of it, so I'll do this one. So use your finger as a guide. Use that run out. What I'll do is I'll flip the guitar around so that the run out is on that side because I'm right-handed. But you come across and then I pull that fret, I pull that file so that I'm using that run out right on the tip of that fret, and it's already like perfect. And of course you're gonna have your so this one's still, it's still a little wide on one side, so it needs more file. But you're gonna put your marker on there, and then you got a nice wide black line on there, and then I'll do it real quick, one, so you guys can see it. Like, that's how good these came out. I hope we're going to get it on the camera. Right there. Can you see that super thin marker line right down the center of that fret? If that marker line was fat on one side and thin on the other side, it means I got to work on the fat side. I'll try to find one. This one. This is probably one of the highest ones there was on there because it's got the biggest flat on it. So let's see how much of an effort it's going to be. Okay, I'm going to stop there so that you guys can look at it. Where's my finger? There it is. Okay, so you can see how the line is thicker down here than it is up at the top of the fret. So what that means is the fret is still too wide at the bottom, but it's pretty much done being crowned at the top because I just got a thin black line up there. Of course I gotta dress the end of that with using the run out part. See how the teeth just kind of run away to nothing right there. If you use that on the edge of that fret, wow, it's like done. It really cleans the fret up super nice. And that fret will not have to get, I don't have to do anything else to that fret. Well, I do have to do one other thing to that fret. I'll show you, but you're gonna use that run out. And you hear how it's cutting more down here than it is up here? That's because the fret's wider. So that means that the marker is telling me the truth because the file is telling me the same thing. Still a little bit wide, just a tiny bit down here. So I gotta flip the guitar around the other way so I can get this direction. I've never tried this. I'm gonna try it right now. I didn't know I could do it like this. And that's pretty beautiful. Oh yeah, it's very beautiful. I'm gonna pick the phone up to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. Let's mark it so we don't lose it, because that was the widest fret, so the one right in front of the tool there. So let's pick the phone up and try to show you guys, see if we can capture. Well, how am I gonna do that? I gotta flip the. Oh, there we go. Okay. What I'm looking at is see the scratch lines in it up here, and see how they're there you go. That's the angle that I want. See the scratchy lines in it at the top and the scratchy lines at the bottom, or bottom and top, whatever, depends on which way you're looking at it. But see that super thin scratchy line right there? That means that this tool has not cut that part of the fret. I don't want it to cut that part of the fret because I leveled the frets. If I'm cutting that part of the fret, I'm cutting that fret too low. So the only other thing that I got to do to be done with this fret is, this is a 1000 grit paper. Let's put you, well, here, I'll just show you. So see how I got like a little fold in it right there? I use that folded side of it, and I just run my, I'm digging in to the inside edge of this fret. I'm not going to go right straight across the top and just try to remove any material from the top. I'm just going to go like on a 45-degree angle. On one side. And then, see my paper? I just move my paper down a 1/2 inch. So I got nice clean paper to work with right there. And then I just go do the same thing on the other side. I usually do this, I'll go all down one side and then I flip the guitar. But for the video, I'll try to show you. I'm pressing in at a 45-degree angle, not pressing straight down on the top. You know, the paper will find that groove right there. And that's where I'm sanding, that's smoothing. And the idea here is to get rid of any of the marks that I left with the file. Make sure you go all the way to the edges, both edges. So you can actually, you can really see, like, I'm surprised how well that came up on camera, but and what I'm trying to do here is I want to just make sure I don't have any snaggies over here, which I definitely got a little bit right on that corner right there. And this side is perfect. So when I flip the guitar around, I got to make sure I get, you know, that corner has to be perfect, which right now it's almost, but it's not quite. But anyway, that's what I'm looking for, and that's 1000. If you go over that and polish it, if there's any scratches left, the polish, the video says it all. I mean, just look at it. That's pretty perfect already. I got a little bit more scratchies right on this edge of it, but remember, I gotta flip it around. And you know, just for the video, you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. Look how that fret stands out from the other frets. It's kind of cool, but a little more work on this end of it. But wow, I am just loving this guitar now. Like, I have to not want to give it back. I gotta love it enough that I don't want to give it back before I give it back. All right, that's all I got for this one, guys. Thanks for your patience. We got more. I still got my 12-string neck through that I'm building. And while this has been sitting and curing, I started another project, PRS body. I'll get you guys up to speed on that one. As soon as this one's done, we'll show it to you guys, and maybe we'll do a sound check. Last sound check I did, they took it down because I may have inadvertently played some AC/DC by accident, and they flagged it. And so we'll have to come up with some original material for a sound check next time. But that's all I got for this one, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.